We're Starfleet officers. Weird is part of the job.
Toss some beads at your streamer. Your wallets are plenty. Your wallets are plenty. Ho ho.
That after stream. Dang it. Y'all's banging on the door asking for more soup. The heck?
Welcome, everybody. Good night. Good night. Good evening. Thank you, Cozy, for that legendary entrance right there. That was great. I'm cracking up. Congratulations on first. Let me see. Okay, there we go. There we go. You know what they say about clipping, girl. Thank you for the soul. Ooh, we're at lucky 13. Very nice. Tossing some bits. Oh my god. And then you tossed a bit. Wow. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Muted. I saw the oh. Oh my god. I love how you guys can tell when I'm like, oh, it's working. Hmm. Hmm. We have to decide on a sound at some point. for our soul sacrifice. And the nom nom face. Nom nom. Oh, we're drinking one. We'll never know. I actually was drinking something. Very good. You know me too well. Like, ah. No, no. Ah. There we go. You're so pissed off at everything early today to curse like crazy. Turns out I was just hangry. Honestly, that's so real. Have you eaten since then? Have you taken care of yourselves? These are important questions, you know. Very important. All right, so we're gonna read Grimm's bulletins. Everyone likes Grimm's fairy tales, right? You got a choo-choo train. What is this? Oh! I wonder what it's advertising. Swimming. You bake some frozen chicken thighs and toss some spicy Korean fried chicken sauce. Oh, that sounds delicious. Okay, let's pick some really cozy music. Let me see. Shine. Okay. I think we should set it to be nighttime for now. So that it's not too bright. Let me see. Now then you gotta make that sauce. Ooh, I don't know if I'm buying them outside any more than just for the convenience. It's completely fair. Let's see. Hmm. I wonder if this actually will end up being like peaceful for us. So cute. As you get off the swing, we want your flower. That's a smidge questionable, but it's fine. Okay. We're gonna pull out some limbs. And we've got some violin music playing. We heading straight for the food in the garden. Listen, and laundry. You're taking care of stuff. I love that. So have you guys heard the Frog King before? Let's see. In old times, when wishing still helped one, there lived a king whose daughters were all beautiful. But the youngest was so beautiful that the sun itself, which has seen so much, was astonished whenever it shone in her face. Oh, you have them? Ah, you're about to. This is one of my favorites. It's a little different than the Mother Goose version, but not that different. Close by the king's castle lay a great dark forest, and under an old lime tree in the forest was a well. And when the day was very warm, the king's child went out into the forest and sat down by the side of the cool fountain. And when she was dull, she took a golden ball and threw it up on high and caught it. And this ball was her favorite plaything. Now, it so happened that on one occasion, the princess's golden ball did not fall into the little hand which she was holding out for it, but onto the ground beyond and rolled straight into the water. The king's daughter followed it with her eyes, but it vanished, and the well was deep, so deep that the bottom could not be seen. On this she began to cry, and cried louder and could not be comforted. And as she thus lamented, someone said to her, "What ails thee, king's daughter? Thou weepest so that even a stone would show pity." She looked round at the side from whence the voice came, and saw a frog stretching forth its thick, ugly head from the water. "Ah, old water splasher, is it thou?" said she. "I am weeping for my golden ball which has fallen into the well." "Be quiet and do not weep," answered the frog. "I can help thee. But what wilt thou give me if I bring thy plaything up again?" "Whatever thou wilt have, dear frog," said she. "My clothes, my pearls and jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing." The frog answered, "I do not care for thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, or thy golden crown. But if thou wilt love me and let me be thy companion and playfellow, I sit by thee at thy little table, and eat off thy little golden plate, and drink out of thy little golden cup, and sleep in thy little bed. If thou wilt promise me this, I will go down below and bring thee thy golden ball up again." "Oh yes," said she, "I promise thee all thou wishest, if thou wilt but bring my ball back again." She, however, thought, "How the silly frog does talk! He lives in the water with the other frogs, and croaks, and can be no companion to any human being. God, he is talking to you anyway." But the frog, when he had received this promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with the ball in his mouth and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more, and picked it up and ran away with it. "Wait, wait," said the frog, and turned on my keyboard flashing. Yeah. "Take me with thee. I can't run as fast as thou canst." But what did it avail him to scream his croak after her as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well again. The next day, when she had seated herself at table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from her little golden plate, something came creeping splish-splash, splish-splash, up the marble staircase, and when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog in front of it. Then she slammed the door to, in great haste, sat down to dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, "My child, what art thou so afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry thee away?" No," replied she. "It is no giant, but a disgusting frog." "What does a frog want with thee?" "Ah, dear father, yesterday, as I was in the forest sitting by the well, playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and because I cried so, the frog brought it out again for me, and because he insisted on it, I promised him he should be my companion, but I never thought he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants to come in to me." In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, "Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me. Dost thou know what thou saidst to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, youngest princess, open the door for me." Then said the king, "That which thou hast promised must thou perform. Go and let him in." She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her, step by step, to her chair. There he sat and cried, "Lift me up beside thee." She delayed until at last the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table, and when he was on the table, he said, "Now push thy little golden plate nearer to me so that we may eat together." She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The frog enjoyed what he ate, but almost every mouthful she took choked her. At length he said, "I have eaten and am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me into thy little room, and make thy little silken bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep." The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the cold frog, which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty, clean little bed. But the king grew angry and said, "He who helped thee when thou wert in trouble ought not afterwards to be despised by thee." So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her and said, "I am tired. I want to sleep as well as thou. Lift me up, or I will tell thy father." Then she was terribly angry, and took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall. "Now thou wilt be quiet, odious frog," said she. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son with beautiful kind eyes. He, by her father's will, was now her dear companion. He told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together to his kingdom. Then they went to sleep, and next morning when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving up with 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their heads, and were harnessed with golden chains, and behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was changed into a frog that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid round his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in, and placed himself behind again, and was full of joy because of this deliverance. And when they had driven a part of the way, the king's son heard a cracking behind him, as if something had broken. So he turned round and cried, "Henry, the carriage is breaking." "No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and imprisoned in the well." Again and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked. And each time the king's son thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands which were springing from the heart of Faithful Henry because his master was set free and was happy. But yeah, the Mother Goose version is indeed different from the Grimm's version, as one might imagine. Miss Grimm's version is actually gentler than the Mother Goose version, believe it or not. Right, half of you have little flowers ready. Okay, so this one is The Giant and the Tailor. How's her music volume, Cozy? Is it good? I'm sorry, guys, I was run ragged today. Yes, okay, good. Thank you, thank you. If you know any really soothing songs, feel free to share them and I'll play them for you. The Giant and the Tailor. A certain tailor who was great at boasting, but ill at doing. Where does the sound come from? Anyway, this certain tailor, who was great at boasting, but ill at doing, took it into his head to go abroad for a while, and to look about the world. As soon as he could manage it, he left his workshop and wandered on his way, over hill and dale, sometimes hither, sometimes thither, but ever on and on. Once, when he was out, he perceived in the blue distance a steep hill, and behind it a tower reaching into the clouds, which rose up out of a wild, dark forest. "Thunder and lightning!" cried the tailor. "What is that?" And as he was strongly goaded by curiosity, he went boldly towards it. But what made the tailor open his eyes and mouth when he came near it was to see that the tower had legs, and leapt in one bound over the steep hill, and was now standing as an all-powerful giant before him. "What dost thou want here, thou tiny fly's leg?" cried the giant, with a voice as if it were thundering on every side. The tailor whimpered, "I just want to look about and see if I can earn a bit of bread for myself in this forest." "If that is what thou art after," said the giant, "thou mayst have a place with me." "If it must be, why not? What wage shall I receive?" "And thou shalt hear what wages thou shalt have. Every year, 365 days, and when it is leap year, one more into the bargain. Does that suit thee?" "Oh boy." "All right," replied the tailor, and thought in his own mind, "A man must cut his coat according to his cloth. I will try to get away as fast as I can." On this the giant said to him, "Go, little ragamuffin, and fetch me a jug of water." "Had I not better bring the well itself at once, and the spring too?" asked the boaster, and went with the pitcher to the water. "What? The well and the spring too?" growled the giant into his beard, for he was rather clownish and stupid, and began to be afraid. "That knave is not a fool, he has a wizard in his body. Be on thy guard, old Hans, this is no serving man for thee." When the tailor had brought the water, the giant bade him go into the forest and cut a couple of blocks of wood and bring them back. Why not the whole forest, at once, with one stroke? The whole forest, young and old, with all that is there, both rough and smooth, asked the little tailor, and went to cut the wood. "What? The whole forest, young and old, with all that is there, both rough and smooth, and the well and its spring too," growled the credulous giant in his beard, and was still more terrified. "The knave can do much more than bake apples, and has a wizard in his body. Be on thy guard, old Hans, this is no serving man for thee." When the tailor had brought the wood, the giant commanded him to shoot 2 or 3 wild boars for supper. "Why not rather 1,000 at one shot, and bring them all here?" inquired the ostentatious tailor. This is a wee bit exciting for sleep. "What?" cried the timid giant in great terror. "Let well alone tonight, and lie down to rest." The giant was so terribly alarmed that he could not close an eye all night long for thinking what would be the best way to get rid of this accursed sorcerer of a servant. Time brings counsel. Next morning the giant and the tailor went to a marsh, round which stood a number of willow trees. Then said the giant, "Hark thee two, Isn't it? Oh, it's a bird. In the game. There you go. Then said the giant, "Hark thee, tailor, seat thyself on one of the willow branches. I long of all things to see if thou art big enough to bend it down." All at once the tailor was sitting on it, holding his breath and making himself so heavy that the bough bent down. When, however, he was compelled to draw breath, it hurried him, for unfortunately he had not put his goose in his pocket, so high into the air that he was never seen again, and this to the great delight of the giant. If the tailor has not fallen down again, he must be hovering about in the air. All right, the little peasant. There was a certain village wherein no one lived but really rich peasants, and just one poor one whom they called the little peasant. He had not even so much as a cow, and still less money to buy one, and yet he and his wife did so wish to have one. One day he said to her, "Hark you, I have a good thought. There's our gossip the carpenter. He shall make us a wooden calf, and paint it brown, so that it look like any other, and in time it will certainly get big and be a cow." The woman also liked the idea, and their gossip the carpenter cut and planed the calf, and painted it as it ought to be, and made it with its head hanging down as if it were eating. Next morning, when the cows were being driven out, the little peasant called the cowherd in and said, "Look, I have a little calf there, but it is still small and has to be carried." The cowherd said, "All right," and took it in his arms and carried it to the pasture and set it among the grass. The little calf always remained standing like one which was eating, and the cowherd said, "It will soon run alone. Just look how it eats already." At night, when he was going to drive the herd home again, he said to the calf, "If thou canst stand there and eat thy fill, thou canst also go on thy 4 legs. I don't care to drag thee home again in my arms." But the little peasant stood at his door and waited for his little calf, and when the cowherd drove the cows through the village and the calf was missing, he inquired where it was. The cowherd answered, "It is still standing out there eating. It would not stop and come with us." But the little peasant said, "Oh, but I must have my beast back again." Then they went back to the meadow together, but someone had stolen the calf, and it was gone. The cowherd said, "It must have run away." The peasant, however, said, "Don't tell me that," and led the cowherd before the mayor, who, for his carelessness, condemned him to give the peasant a cow for the calf which had run away. And now the little peasant and his wife had the cow for which they had so long wished, and they were heartily glad, but they had no food for it, and could give it nothing to eat, so it soon had to be killed. They salted the flesh, and the peasant went into town and wanted to sell the skin there, so that he might buy a new calf with the proceeds. On the way, he passed by a mill, and there sat a raven with broken wings, and out of pity he took him and wrapped him in the skin. As, however, the weather grew so bad, and there was a storm of rain and wind, he could go no further, and turned back to the mill and begged for shelter. The miller's wife was alone in the house and said to the peasant, "Lay thyself on the straw there," and gave him a slice of bread with cheese on it. The peasant ate it and lay down with his skin beside him, and the woman thought, "He is tired and has gone to sleep." In the meantime came the parson. The miller's wife received him well and said, "My husband is out, so we will have a feast." The peasant listened, and when he heard about feasting, he was vexed that he had been forced to make shift with a slice of bread with cheese on it. Then the woman served up 4 different things: roast meat, salad, cakes, and wine. Just as they were about to sit down and eat, there was a knocking outside. "Oh heavens, it is my husband." She quickly hid the roast meat inside the tiled stove, and the wine under the pillow, the salad on the bed, the cakes under it, and the parson in the cupboard in the entrance. Then she opened the door for her husband and said, "Thank heaven thou art back again. There is such a storm, it looks as if the world were coming to an end." The miller saw the peasant lying on the straw and asked, "What was that fellow doing there?" "Ah," said the wife, "the poor knave came in the storm and rain and begged for shelter. So I gave him a bit of bread and cheese and showed him where the straw was." The man said, "I have no objection, but be quick and get me something to eat." The woman said, "But I have nothing but bread and cheese." "Hi, Cassie, I'm well. How are you, dear?" "I am very, very tired. I hope you're ready to head to bed too." "I am contented with anything," replied the husband. "So far as I am concerned, bread and cheese will do," and looked at the peasant and said, "Come and eat some more with me." The peasant did not require to be invited twice, but got up and ate. After this, the miller saw the skin in which the raven was, lying on the ground, and he asked, "What hast thou there?" "I'm so glad," the peasant answered. "I have a soothsayer inside it." "Can he foretell anything to me?" said the miller. "Why not?" answered the peasant. "But he says only 4 things, and the 5th he keeps to himself." The miller was curious and said, "Let him foretell something for once." Then the peasant pinched the raven's head so that he croaked and made a noise like "Cur, cur." The miller said, "What did he say?" The peasant answered, "In the first place, he says that there is some wine hidden under the pillow." "Bless me!" cried the miller. And went there and found the wine. "Now go on," said he. The peasant had the raven croak again and said, "In the second place, he says that there is some roast meat in a tiled stove." "Upon my word," cried the miller, and went thither, and found the roast meat. The peasant made the raven prophesy still more, and said, "Thirdly, he says that there is some salad on the bed." "That would be a fine thing," cried the miller, and went there and found the salad. At last, the
The
peasant
clap of my
pinched
ass cheeks keeps alerting the guards.
Raven now. Raven, we're going to bed. You're waking us up with your grand derriere. All right. Now, what did the raven just say? The raven, so there's a salad on the bed. Okay. "That would be a fine thing," cried the miller, and went there and found the salad. At last, the peasant pinched the raven once more till he croaked and said, "Fourthly, he says that there are some cakes under the bed." That would be a fine thing, cried the miller again, and looked there, and found the cakes. And now the two sat down to the table together. But the miller's wife was frightened to death, and went to bed and took all the keys with her. The miller would have liked much to know the fifth, but the little peasant said, "First, we will quickly eat the 4 things, for the fifth is something bad." Oh, no, you're okay, Raven. You're okay. I was being silly, but we are headed to bed soon. But it's a very funny blurb. We can't just not have it. It's our Ravenism. We got our Ravenism for the night. Welcome in, my dear. I hope that you're well. How are you? So they ate, and after that, they bargained how much the miller was to give for the 5th prophecy, until they agreed on 300 thalers. Thalers? Thalers. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna be honest. Then the peasant once more pinched the raven's head till he croaked loudly. The miller asked, "What did he say?" The peasant replied, "He says the devil is hiding outside there in the cupboard in the entrance." The miller said, "The devil must go out," and opened the house door. Then the woman was forced to give up the keys, and the peasant unlocked the cupboard. The parson ran out as fast as they could, and the miller said, "It was true. I saw the rascal with my own eyes." We're trying to not clap our cheeks too hard at this hour. True, very true. Resting them, so that they may clap another day. The peasant, however, made off the next morning by daybreak with the 300 thalers. At home, the small peasant gradually launched out. He built a beautiful house, and the peasant said, "The small peasant has certainly been to the place where golden snow falls, and people carry the gold home in shovels." Then the small peasant was brought before the mayor and bidden to say from whence his wealth came. He answered, "I sold my cow's skin in the town for 300 thalers." When the peasants heard that, they too wished to enjoy this great profit, and ran home, killed all their cows, and stripped off their skins in order to sell them in the town to the greatest advantage. The mayor, however, said, "But my servant must go first." When she came to the merchant in the town, he did not give her more than 2 thalers for a skin. And when the others came, he did not give them so much, and said, "What can I do with all these skins?" Then the peasants were vexed. The small peasant should have thus overreached them, wanted to take vengeance on him, and accused him of this treachery before the mayor. The innocent little peasant was unanimously sentenced to death, and was to be rolled into the water in a barrel pierced full of holes. He was led forth, and a priest was brought who was to say mass for his soul. The others were all obliged to retire to a distance. And when the peasant looked at the priest, he recognized the man who had been with the miller's wife. He said to him, "I set you free from the cupboard. Set me free from the barrel." At this moment up came with a flock of sheep the very shepherd who, as the peasant knew, had long been wishing to be mayor. So he cried with all his might, "No, I will not do it. If the whole world insists on it, I will not do it." The shepherd, hearing that, came up to him and asked, "What art thou about? What is it that thou wilt not do?" The peasant said, "They want to make me mayor if I will but put myself in the barrel, but I will not do it." The shepherd said, If nothing more than that is needful in order to be mayor, I would get into the barrel at once. The peasant said, If thou wilt get in, thou wilt be mayor. The shepherd was willing, and got in, and the peasant shut the top down on him. Then he took the shepherd's flock for himself and drove it away. Oh my goodness. Welcome back, Raven. You were totally fine, Angel. How are you today? He tried it, and the key fitted it exactly. Wait, hold on. Ah, I see. I accidentally read ahead. I skipped a page. I flipped to it once. The parson went to the crowd and declared that the mass had been said. Then they came and rolled the barrel towards the water. When the barrel began to roll, the shepherd cried, I am quite willing to be mayor. They believed no otherwise than that it was the peasant who was saying this, and answered, That is what we intend, but first thou shalt look about thee a little down below there. My goodness, what a tongue twister. That is what we intend, but first thou shalt look about thee a little down below there. And they rolled the barrel down into the water. After that, the peasant went home, and as they were entering the village, the small peasant also came quietly in, driving a flock of sheep and looking quite contented. Then the peasants were astonished, and said, Peasant, from whence comest thou? Hast thou come out of the water? Yes, truly, replied the peasant. I sank deep, deep down, until at last I got to the bottom. I pushed the bottom out of the barrel and crept out, and there were pretty meadows on which a number of lambs were feeding, and from thence I brought this flock away with me. Said the peasants, Are there any more there? Oh, yes, said he, more than I could do anything with. Then the peasants made up their minds that they too would fetch some sheep for themselves, a flock apiece. But the mayor said, I come first. So they went to the water together, and just then there were some of the small fleecy clouds in the blue sky, which are called little lambs, and they were reflected in the water, whereupon the peasants cried, We already see the sheep down below. The mayor pressed forward and said, I will go down first and look about me, and if things promise well, I'll call you. So he jumped in. Splash went the water. He made a sound as if he were calling them, and the whole crowd plunged in after him as one man. Then the entire village was dead, and the small peasant, a sole heir, became a rich man. Now this is a story of don't believe everything you hear. You're good, just tired, but you can't sleep. Oh no. I hope this helps you sleep. Admittedly, I am quite sleepy myself. Is my reading loud enough for all of you to hear? I hope so. And if you want to be a little gordlet, just type exclamation gordlets, just like this, in the chat, and then you can be one of the little guys here. And if more than one of you want to be one, I will call more into town. They'll have more. Yes. Oh, cats. Become gordlet with us. Oops, cat. It's okay. The Golden Key. In the winter time, when deep snow lay on the ground, a poor boy was forced to go out on a sledge to fetch wood. When he had gathered it together and packed it, he wished, as he was so frozen with cold, not to go home at once, but to light a fire and warm himself a little. So he scraped away the snow, and as he was thus clearing the ground, he found a tiny gold key. Hereupon he thought that where the key was, the lock must be also, and dug in the ground and found an iron chest. If the key does but fit it, thought he, no doubt there are precious things in that little box. He searched, but no key was there, and at last he discovered one, but so small that it was hardly visible. He tried it, and the key fitted exactly. Then he turned it once round, and now we must wait until he has quite unlocked it and opened the lid, and then we shall learn what wonderful things were lying in that box. What kind of story was that? There's got to be a part 2. We'll find out, I guess. Sharing joy and sorrow. There was once a tailor who was a quarrelsome fellow, and his wife, who was good, industrious, and pious, never could please him. Whatever she did, he was not satisfied, but grumbled and scolded and knocked her about and beat her. As the authorities at last heard of it, they had him summoned and put in prison in order to make him better. He was kept for a while on bread and water, then set free again. He was forced, however, to promise not to beat his wife any more, but to live with her in peace and share joy and sorrow with her, as married people ought to do. All went on well for a time, but then he fell into his old ways and was surly and quarrelsome. And because he dared not beat her, he would seize her by the hair. Oh my goodness! But the woman escaped from him and sprang out into the yard. But he ran after her with his yard measure and scissors and chased her about, and threw the yard measure and scissors at her, and whatever else came his way. When he hit her, he laughed, and when he missed her, he stormed and swore. This went on so long that the neighbors finally came to the wife's assistance. The tailor was again summoned before the magistrates and reminded of his promise. "Dear gentlemen," said he, "I have kept my word. I have not beaten her, but have shared joy and sorrow with her." "How can that be," said the judge, "when she continually brings such heavy complaints against you?" "I have not beaten her, but just because she looked so strange I wanted to comb her hair with my hand. She, however, got away from me and left me quite spitefully. Then I hurried after her, and in order to bring her back to her duty, I flew at her as a well-meant admonition whatever came readily to hand. I have shared joy and sorrow with her also, for whenever I hit her, I was full of joy, and she of sorrow, and if I missed her, she was joyful, and I sorry." The judges were not satisfied with this answer, but gave him the reward he deserved. Oh, he did. Okay. Oh, good. We have Tom Thumb after this. Okay. But first, the mail. A merchant had done good business at the fair. He had sold his wares and lined his money bags with gold and silver. Then he wanted to travel homewards and be in his own house before nightfall. So he packed his trunk with the money on his horse and rode away. At noon he rested in a town, When he wanted to go farther, the stable boy brought out his horse and said, "A nail is wanting, sir, in the shoe of its left hind foot." "Let it be wanting," answered the merchant. "The shoe will certainly stay on for the 6 miles I still have to go. I am in a hurry." In the afternoon, when he was once more lighted and had his horse fed, the stable boy went into the room to him and said, "Sir, a shoe is missing from your horse's left hind foot." "Shall I take him to the blacksmith?" "Let it still be wanting," answered the man. "The horse can very well hold out for the couple of miles which remain." "I am in haste." He rode forth, but before long the horse began to limp. It had not limped long before it began to stumble. And it had not stumbled long before it fell down and broke its leg. The merchant was forced to leave the horse where it was and unbuckle the trunk, take it on his back, and go home on foot. And there he did not arrive until quite late at night. "And that unlucky nail," said he to himself, "has caused all this disaster." "Hasten slowly" is the last sentence. We all know whose fault that was. I didn't think it was a nail. This is Tom Thumb. You guys might remember this one. It might remind one of Thumbelina, if you guys have ever seen that movie. It's a very odd movie. I watched it far too much as a child to be healthy. Tom Thumb. There was once a poor peasant who sat in the evening by the hearth and poked the fire, and his wife sat and span. Then said he, "How sad is it that we have no children? With us all is so quiet, and in other houses it is noisy and lively." "Yes," replied the wife, and sighed. "Even if we had only one, and it were quite small and only as big as a thumb, I should be quite satisfied, and we would still love it with all our hearts." And now it so happened that the woman fell ill, and after 7 months gave birth to a child that was perfect in all its limbs, but no bigger than a thumb. Oh, watch Beauty and the Beast on repeat. We all had our quirky movies. I love that. And then said they, "It is as we wished it to be, and it shall be our dear child." And because of its size, they called it Tom Thumb. They did not let it want for food, but the child did not grow taller, but remained as it had been at the first. Nevertheless, it looked sensibly out of its eyes, and soon showed itself to be a wise and nimble creature, for everything it did turned out so well. One day the peasant was getting ready to go into the forest to cut wood, when he said as if to himself, "Oh, how I wish that there was anyone who would bring the cart to me." "Oh, father," cried Tom Thumb, "I will soon bring the cart, rely on that. It shall be in the forest at the appointed time." The man smiled and said, "How can that be done? Thou art far too small to lead the horse by the reins." "That's of no consequence, father. If my mother will only harness it, I shall sit in the horse's ear and call out to him how he is to go." "Well," answered the man, "for once we will try it." When the time came, the mother harnessed the horse and placed Tom Thumb in its ear, and then the little creature cried, "Gee up, gee up." Then it went quite properly as if with its master, and the cart went the right way into the forest. It so happened that just as he was turning a corner, and the little one was crying, "Gee up," two strange men came towards him. "My word," said one of them, "what is this? There is a cart coming, and a driver is calling to the horse, and still he is not to be seen." "That can't be right," said the other. "We will follow the cart and see where it stops." In Power Ranger, I was a geek way before I knew what a geek was. That's all right. Hmm. Let's see. Okay. The cart, however, drove right into the forest and exactly to the place where the wood had been cut. When Tom Thumb saw his father, he cried to him, "Seest thou, father, here I am with the cart, now take me down." The father got hold of the horse with his left hand, and with the right took his little son out of the ear. Tom Thumb sat down quite merrily on a straw, but when the two strange men saw him, they did not know what to say for astonishment. Then one of them took the other aside and said, "Hark, the little fellow would make our fortune if we exhibited him in a large town for money. We will buy him." They went to the peasant and said, "Sell us the little man. He shall be well treated with us." "No," replied the father, "he is the apple of my eye, and all the money in the world cannot buy him from me." Tom Thumb, however, when he heard of the bargain, had crept up the folds of his father's coat, placed himself on his shoulder, and whispered in his ear, "Father, do give me away. I will soon come back again." Then the father parted with him to the two men for a handsome bit of money. "Where wilt thou sit?" they said to him. "Oh, just set me on the rim of your hat, and then I can walk backwards and forwards and look at the country and still not fall down." They did as he wished, and when Tom Thumb had taken leave of his father, they went away with him. They walked until it was dusk, and then the little fellow said, "Do take me down, I want to come down." The man took his hat off and put the little fellow on the ground by the wayside, and he leapt and crept about a little between the sods, and then he suddenly slipped into a mouse hole which he had sought out. "Good evening, gentlemen, just go home without me," he cried to them, and mocked them. Oh dear. They ran thither and stuck their sticks into the mouse hole, but it was all lost to labour. Tom Thumb crept still farther in, and as it soon became quite dark, they were forced to go home with their vexation and their empty purses. When Tom Thumb saw that they were gone, he crept back out of the subterranean passage. "It is so dangerous to walk on the ground in the dark," said he. "How easily a neck or a leg is broken. Fortunately, he knocked against an empty snail shell. 'Thank goodness,' said he. 'In that I can pass the night in safety,' and got into it. Not long afterwards, when he was just going to sleep, he heard two men go by, and one of them was saying, 'How shall we contrive to get a hold of the rich pastor's silver and gold?' 'I could tell thee that,' cried Tom Thumb, interrupting them. 'What was that?' said one of the thieves in fright. 'I heard someone speaking.' They stood still listening, and Tom Thumb spoke again and said, 'Take me with you, and I'll help you.' 'But where art thou?' 'Just look on the ground, and observe from whence my voice comes,' he replied. And there the thieves at length found him and lifted him up. "Thou little imp, how wilt thou help us?" they said. "A great deal," said he. "I will creep into the pastor's room through the iron bars, and will reach out to you whatever you want to have." "Come then," they said, "and we will see what thou canst do." When they got to the pastor's house, Tom Thumb crept into the room, but instantly cried out with all his might, "Do you want to have everything that is here?" The thieves were alarmed and said, "But do speak softly, so as not to wake anyone." Tom Thumb, however, behaved as if he had not understood this, and cried again, "What do you want? Do you want to have everything that is here?" The cook, who slept in the next room, heard this and sat in bed and listened. The thieves, however, had in their fright run some distance away, but at last they took courage and thought, "The little rascal wants to mock us." They came back and whispered to him, "Come, be serious and reach something out to us." Then Tom Thumb again cried as loudly as he could, "I really will give you everything, just put your hands in." The maid who was listening heard this quite distinctly, and jumped out of bed and rushed to the door. The thieves took flight, and ran as if the wild huntsmen were behind them, but as the maid could not see anything, she went to strike a light. When she came to the place with it, Tom Thumb, unperceived, betook himself to the granary, and the maid, after she had examined every corner and found nothing, lay down in her bed again and believed that, after all, she had only been dreaming with open eyes and ears. Tom Thumb had climbed up among the hay and found a beautiful place to sleep in. There he intended to rest until day and then go home again to his parents. But he had other things to go through. Truly there is much affliction and misery in this world. When day dawned, the maid arose from her bed to feed the cows. Her first walk was into the barn, where she laid hold of an armful of hay, and precisely that very one in which poor Tom Thumb was lying asleep. He, however, was sleeping so soundly that he was aware of nothing, and did not awake until he was in the mouth of the cow who had picked him up with the hay. "Ah, heavens!" cried he, "how have I got into the fulling mill?" But he soon discovered where he was. Then it was necessary to be careful not to let himself go between the teeth and be dismembered. But he was nevertheless forced to slip down into the stomach with the hay. "In this little room the windows are forgotten," said he, "and no sun shines in, neither will a candle be brought." His quarters were especially unpleasing to him, and the worst was, more and more hay was always coming in by the door, and the space grew less and less. Then at length in his anguish he cried as loud as he could, "Bring me no more fodder, bring me no more fodder." The maid was just milking the cow, and when she heard someone speaking and saw no one, and perceived it was the same voice she had heard in the night, she was so terrified that she slipped off her stool and spilt the milk. She ran in great haste to her master and said, "Oh heavens, pastor, the cow has been speaking." "Thou art mad," replied the pastor, but he went himself to the byre to see what was there. Hardly, however, had he set his foot inside when Tom Thumb again cried, "Bring me no more fodder, bring me no more fodder." Then the pastor himself was alarmed, and thought that an evil spirit had gone into the cow and ordered her to be killed. She was killed, but the stomach in which Tom Thumb was thrown on the midden. Tom Thumb had great difficulty in working his way. However, he succeeded so far as to get some room. But just as he was going to thrust his head out, a new misfortune occurred. A hungry wolf ran thither, and swallowed the whole stomach in one gulp. Tom Thumb did not lose courage. Perhaps, thought he, the wolf will listen to what I have got to say. And he called to him from out of his stomach, Dear wolf, I know of a magnificent feast for thee. Where is it to be had? Said the wolf. Sorry, guys, I have to adjust my legs while you see. Maybe a squeaky chair. In such and such a house, thou must creep into it through the kitchen sink. Okay. And wilt find cakes, and bacon, and sausages, and as much of them as thou canst eat. And he described to him exactly his father's house. The wolf did not require to be told this twice, squeezed himself in at night through the sink, and ate to his heart's content in the larder. When he had eaten his fill, he wanted to go out again, but he had become so big that he could not go out by the same way. Tom Thumb had reckoned on this, and now began to make a violent noise in the wolf's body, and raged and screamed as loudly as he could. Wilt thou be quiet? Said the wolf. Thou wilt waken up the people. What? Replied the little fellow. Thou hast eaten thy fill, and I will make merry likewise. And began once more to scream with all his strength. At last his father and mother were roused by it, and ran to the room and looked in through the opening in the door. When they saw that a wolf was inside, they ran away. And the husband fetched his axe, and his wife beside. Stay behind, said the man when they entered the room. When I have given him a blow, if he is not killed by it, thou must cut him down and hew his body to pieces. My goodness. Then Tom Thumb heard his parents, and cried, Dear father, I am here. I am in the wolf's body. Said the father, full of joy, Thank goodness, our dear child has found us again, and bade the woman take away her scythe, that Tom Thumb might not be hurt with it. After that, he raised his arm and struck the wolf such a blow on the head that he fell down. Dead. Poor wolf. And then they got knives and scissors, and drew the little fellow forth. Ah, said the father, what sorrow we have gone through for thy sake. Yes, father, I've gone about the world a great deal. Thank heaven I breathe fresh air again. Where hast thou been, then? Ah, father, I have been in a mouse's hole, in a cow's stomach, and then in a wolf's. Now I will stay with you. And we will not sell thee again. No, not for all the riches in the world, said his parents. And they embraced and kissed the dear Tom Thumb. They gave him to eat and to drink, and had some new clothes made for him, for his own had been quite spoiled on the journey. Next. I am quite eager. Let me look. Thank you, Heart, for the soul. I'm well. How about you? I am getting really sleepy. Admittedly. So I can try to read. I'm glad that you're doing good, Heart. That is so wonderful to hear. I'm very glad. Let me see. I need to plug that in. I'll take that down as well. Parachute. Big beep down here. Alright. I'm glad you're doing well. Okay, so I can try to read the next Tom Thumb Journeyman story. We can work on Alice in Wonderland, or we can read out, or I can let you all go to where you would like to be. Let's see. That's whatever your preference is. I'm so glad you're doing well. I'm glad I got to see you. And the ASM artist that I would read out to was having some tech difficulties. She'll be back shortly. I will keep reading. Do you have a preference between Tom Thumb and Alice in Wonderland? Which Tom Thumb is Grimm's fairy tales. Some of these stories have not aged terribly well, admittedly. Oh, she's back. Sorry, should be reading in my head. Okay. I didn't check it. Hmm. I'll read. Oh, it's a short one. A certain tailor had a son who happened to be small and no bigger than a thumb, and on this account he was always called Tom Thumb. He had, however, some courage in him, and said to his father, "Father, I must and will go out into the world." "That's right, my son," said the old man, and took a long darning needle, and made a knob of sealing wax on it and a candle. "And there's a sword for thee to take with thee on the way." Then the little tailor wanted to have one more meal with him, and hopped into the kitchen to see what his lady mother had cooked for the last time. It was, however, just dished up, and the dish stood on the hearth. Then he said, "Mother, what is there to eat today?" "See for thyself," said his mother. So Tom Thumb jumped onto the hearth and peeped into the dish. But as he stretched his neck in too far, the steam from the food caught hold of him and carried him up the chimney. He rode about in the air on the steam for a little while, until at length he sank down to the ground again. Now the little tailor was outside in the wide world, and he travelled about, and went to a master in his craft. But the food was not good enough for him. "Mistress, if you give us no better food," said Tom Thumb, "I will go away, and early tomorrow morning I will write with chalk on the door of your house, 'Too many potatoes, too little meat. Farewell, Mr. Potato King.'" "What wouldst thou have forsooth, grasshopper?" said the mistress, and grew angry, and seized a dishcloth, and was just going to strike him. But my little tailor crept nimbly under a thimble, peeped out from beneath it, and put his tongue out at the mistress. She took up the thimble and wanted to get hold of him, but little Tom Thumb hopped into the cloth, and while the mistress was opening it out and looking for him, he got into a crevice in the table. "Oho, lady mistress," cried he, and thrust his head out. And when she began to strike him, he leapt down into the drawer. At last, however, she caught him and drove him out of the house. The little tailor journeyed and came to a great forest, and there he fell in with a band of robbers who had a design to steal the king's treasure. When they saw the little tailor, they thought, "A little fellow like that can creep through a keyhole and serve as picklock to us." "Hollo!" cried one of them, "thou giant Goliath, wilt thou go to the treasure chamber with us? Thou canst slip thyself in and throw out the money." Tom Thumb reflected a little, and at length he said, "Yes," and went with them to the treasure chamber. Then he looked at the doors above and below to see if there was any crack in them. It was not long before he espied one which was broad enough to let him in. He was therefore about to get in at once, but one of the two sentries who stood before the door observed him and said to the other, "What an ugly spider is creeping there! I will kill it." "Let the poor creature alone," said the other. "It has done thee no harm." Then Tom Thumb got safely through the crevice into the treasure chamber, opened the window beneath which the robbers were standing, and threw out to them one thaler after another. When the little tailor was in full swing of his work, he heard the king coming to inspect his treasure chamber, and this Tom Thumbist. Mm, Anyhow, the naughty fellow crept hastily into a hiding place. Hastily, sorry, I don't know why I said it like that. The king noticed that several solid thalers were missing, but could not conceive who could have stolen them. For locks and bolts were in good condition, and all seemed well guarded. Then he went away again and said to the sentries, "Be on the watch. Someone is after the money." When therefore Tom Thumb recommenced his labours, they heard the money moving, and sound of clink, clink, clink. They ran swiftly in to seize the thief, but the little tailor who heard them coming was still swifter, and leapt into a corner and covered himself with a thaler, so that nothing could be seen of him, and at the same time he mocked the sentries and cried, "Here am I." The sentries ran thither, but as they got there, he had already hopped onto another corner under a thaler, and was crying, "Hello, here am I." The watchman sprang there in haste, but Tom Thumb had long ago got into a third corner, and was crying, "Ho, here am I." And thus he made fools of them, and drove them so long round the treasure chamber that they were weary and went away. Then, by degrees, he threw all the thalers out, dispatching the last with all his might, then hopped nimbly upon it, and flew down with it through the window. The robbers paid him great compliments. "Thou art a valiant hero," said they. "Thou wilt be our captain. Hey, Grimm, how are you?" Tom Thumb, however, declined, and said he wanted to see the world first. They now divided the booty, but the little tailor only asked for a cruiser because he could not carry more. Then he once more buckled on his sword, bade the robbers good-bye, and took to the road. First he went to work with some masters, but he had no liking for that, and at last he hired himself as manservant at an inn. The maids, however, could not endure him, for he saw all they did secretly without their seeing him, and he told their master and mistress what they had taken off the plates and carried away out of the cellar for themselves. Then said they, "Wait, and we will pay thee off," and arranged with each other to play him a trick. Soon afterwards, one of the maids was mowing in the garden and saw Tom Thumb jumping about and creeping up and down the plants. She mowed him up quickly with the grass, tied all in a great cloth, and secretly threw it to the cows. Oh no. This must be Tom Thumb if he was evil. The wind down is too effective. I'm glad. I'm glad you're doing all right, Colonel. We must go in peace. We're eating to evil, Tom Thumb. Oh. Now amongst them there was a great one who swallowed him down without hurting him. Down below, however, it pleased to mill, for it was quite dark, neither was any candle burning. When the cow was being milked, he cried, "Strip, strap, stroll, will the pail soon be full?" But the noise of the milking prevented his being understood. After this, the master of the house came into the cow byre and said, "That cow shall be killed tomorrow." Then Tom Thumb was so alarmed that he cried out in a clear voice, "Let me out first, for I am shut up inside her." The master heard that quite well, but did not know from whence the voice came. "Where art thou?" asked he. "In the black one," answered Tom Thumb, but the master did not understand what that meant, and went out. I guess because no hollows. Oh no. Next morning the cow was killed. Happily, Tom Thumb did not meet with one blow at the cutting up and chopping. He got among the sausage meat, and when the butcher came in and began his work, he cried out with all his might, "Don't chop too deep, don't chop too deep, I'm amongst it." No one heard this because of the noise of the chopping knife. Now poor Tom Thumb was in trouble. This is karma. But trouble sharpens the wits, and he sprang out so adroitly between the blows that none of them touched him, and he escaped with a whole skin. But still he could not get away. There was nothing for it but to let himself be thrust into a black pudding with bits of bacon. His quarters there were rather confined, and besides that he was hung up in the chimney to be smoked, and their time did hang terribly heavy on his hands. At length in winter he was taken down again, and the black pudding had to be set before a guest. When the hostess was cutting it in slices, he took care not to stretch out his head too far, lest a bit of it should be cut off. At last he saw his opportunity, cleared a passage for himself, and jumped out. The little tailor, however, would not stay any longer in a house where he fared so ill, so at once set out on his journey again. But his liberty did not last long. In the open country, he met with a fox, who snapped him up in a fit of absence. "Hullo, Mr. Fox!" cried the little tailor. "It is I who am sticking in your throat. Set me at liberty again." "Thou art right," answered the fox. "Thou art next to nothing for me. But if thou wilt promise me the fowls in thy father's yard, I will let thee go." "With all my heart," replied Tom Thumb. "Thou shalt have all the cocks and hens that I promised thee." Then the fox let him go again, and himself carried him home. When the father once more saw his dear son, he willingly gave the fox all the fowls which he had. "For this I likewise bring thee a handsome bit of money," said Tom Thumb, and gave his father the cruiser which he earned on his travels. Well, but why did the fox get the poor chickens to eat? "Oh, you goose, your father would surely love his child far more than the fowls in the yard." This is a cute short one. All right, my loves. Next wind down, we'll start with sweet porridge. But for now, we're going to go to eat. Oh, I dropped my water. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. You're happy? Oh, I'm so glad. What have you been up to? You got the pre-download for Sonic. Oh my gosh, I saw an ad for that. I think it's going to be really fun. Of course, Cozy is fishing. Nope, Cozy is looking through the I think this is backwards. There you go. It's happening on the 29th. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you. I hope you enjoy it. You excited? Oh, I'm so excited for you. That's gonna be so much fun. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope everyone sleeps well. I am very tired. It's almost 2 a.m. for me, and I have been running all over the place today with work and doing fun things and some kung fu, lots of exercise, and I'm pretty tired. Grimm, I hope you have a wonderful time. I hope everybody sleeps well and has sweet dreams. I will see you guys on the flip side very soon for um let's see. Well, I guess whatever we're up to next. I forgot. Didn't have a time to make our exact schedule this week. Oh, tell me next time, Grim. I think it's about to launch.